Welcome back to our channel. Today I'm going to be discussing how to avoid a bad property manager. So when you invest in real estate, you basically have two options when it comes to managing the property. Number one, you can go at it alone as a DIY landlord, or number two, you can hire a professional company to help do it for you. So if you choose to hire a professional, you got to understand that not all property managers are created equal. When you hire someone to oversee your real estate investments, a lot's riding on the line. So it's important to steer clear of any bad property managers. I'm going to give you a couple of tips on how to avoid a bad manager before you actually hire them. So tip number one is to just simply ask good questions. So here's going to be I'm going to give you a list of questions I'd suggest you ask, as well as some of the responses that you may want to hear. The first question is simply, are they licensed? I know this seems obvious, but you would actually be surprised. Simply put, if they're not licensed or they can't prove that they are, just cross them off the list and move on. Number two, how long have they been managing real estate for? You want to hire a property manager who has a minimum of 3 to 5 years of experience. This is enough time for them to have seen many of the things they're going to run into on a daily basis and have some experience on how to handle those issues. Question number three, what certifications do they have? Now, this is more of a nice to have versus an actual deal breaker. However, there are trade organizations within the property management industry who offer continuing education. So having a certification shows they invest in themselves, they take their profession seriously, and they're a student of their industry. Some of the most common organizations to see certifications from are Community Associations Institute, National Association of Residential Property Managers, Institute of Real Estate Management, National Apartment Association, and Building Owners and Managers Institute. Question number four, what is their current vacancy rate? Now, although this can fluctuate seasonally and depending upon market conditions, whatever their current vacancy rate is probably what you can expect in the future. So a good idea is to compare a few companies' vacancy rates. This will give you a pretty good idea of current market conditions. Question number five, do they have their own maintenance crew? Now, I'm a little biased here because we do, but this can be extremely beneficial to you if they do and their rates are reasonable. A word of caution when comparing their rates. You'll want to compare them with other legitimate licensed and insured maintenance vendors. Many times people will try comparing them to Chuck in a Truck, who is not licensed or insured and that's not a reasonable comparison. For a plethora of reasons, that's not a good idea. Number six, what kinds of properties do they manage? In my opinion, the fewer types of properties they manage, the better. You'll also want to make sure the experience they have is specific to the real estate you're invested in. For example, hiring a property manager or a property management company to manage your single family or your multifamily home who focuses on commercial real estate is not going to serve you well. Although both of these things are real estate, they're completely different animals and they're just managed differently. Number seven, do they provide brokerage services or do they only focus on managing properties? There are very competent firms out here who do both and do it well. However, there are also real estate agents out there who do property management on the side and aren't necessarily fully committed to doing the job well. So your best bet is to hire a company that specializes in managing properties. Question number eight, when are owner statements and deposits sent out? Anything less than once per month is going to be unacceptable. However, there are two common timeframes you can expect. The first is being paid between the 10th and the 15th of the month for the current month's rents. And the second is being paid between the 1st and the 5th of the month for the previous month's rent. Any one of these timeframes is an acceptable option. Question number nine, how often do they need to evict tenants? Now, all property managers deal with evictions, even the good ones. But the frequency at which they deal with them is an indicator of how well they screen their tenants on the front end. A good property manager will spend the time on the front end to screen tenants thoroughly in order to avoid dealing with any type of eviction later in the process. Question number 10, what are their fees? So the main figure that people focus on is the management fee, but there are other fees involved as well. Because every company charges different fees in different ways, comparing fees between companies can sometimes be tricky. And sometimes you feel like you might be comparing apples to oranges. So you're going to want to make sure to ask about each company's fees that will be charged. In my experience, most reputable property management companies are competitive with their pricing. And after running several analysis on properties, I've seen that if you compare fees over a 1 to 2 year period versus a month-to-month period, typically it's a close race. On a shorter term time frame, one company may look more attractive than another, but if you spread out that time frame, or the longer the time frame you have, you start to see that those margins start to thin and everybody runs a pretty close race. Question number 11, how long is your management contract and can you terminate it? You want to make sure you understand the details of any contract you're going to be signing. You need to understand if you're locked into a contract for a certain period of time, typically like 12 months, or if you have the option to actually cancel the contract at any time with a 30 or 60-day notice. So those are several questions you can ask that'll help you in your search. Next is tip number 2, which are a few common things you want to make sure you watch out for. The first is unprofessionalism. Someone who treats you unprofessionally during the sales process is likely to treat you and your tenants unprofessionally during the management period. Although there are some cranky people out there in this business, there are a lot of good property managers out there. You don't have to deal with a jerk, just simply move on. Second is unresponsiveness. You'll want a property manager who responds to you in a timely manner. Although property management is a 24/7, 365-day profession, timely doesn't mean you call your property manager on their cell phone at 8 p.m. at night, expecting them to drop everything they're doing with their family simply to answer your question. That's an unrealistic expectation. This simply means that if you send an email or call their office, you get a response within a reasonable time frame, that same business day or the next. This also means if your tenant calls their after hours emergency line, the 24/7, 365-day kicks in and their emergency is dealt with immediately. Third, lack of reputation. Hiring a property manager who doesn't have a good reputation or no reputation is a train wreck waiting to happen. With technology, it's easy to find a company's digital footprint and just simply check them out. Don't just look at the review scores online, but actually read some of the good and bad reviews. See what both owners and tenants are saying about them. Also look at how they're responding to the negative feedback. You can also ask for references from a property manager. However, with the internet, this seems to be a little antiquated. And let's be honest, they're not going to give you the references of someone who hates them. And those are my suggestions. At the end of the day, when deciding which property management company to hire, the two most important things are, 1, interview at least 2 or 3 companies. And then number 2, hire a company that provides the value you're seeking. If you'll hire for value over price, it will serve you well and cost you less in the long run. And if we here at Envy Property Management can help you out in any way, please reach out to us via our website or give us a call at 801-337-4337. We'd be happy to help you. Thanks for watching.